The moment the judge's pen stopped midair, the entire courtroom fell silent. He glanced at me, then at the sealed folder I had just placed before him. "Do they even realize what's inside this?" he asked quietly. I nodded once and waited. Across the room my parents sat, confident, self-satisfied, certain of victory. They believed today would be the day they finally rescued my nephew, the same boy they once dismissed as my burden. The same child they told me to look after until your sister gets her act together. That was 10 years ago. She never came back. I can still see that night as if it were yesterday. Rain lashed the windows like the sky itself was trying to warn me. When I opened the door, there stood my sister Melissa, mascara streaking her cheeks, eyes empty and exhausted. She didn't explain much, just set a baby carrier on my porch and whispered, "Please, just for a little while." Then she walked away. By morning, her number was disconnected. When I called our parents, my mother sighed as though I'd interrupted dinner. "She's always been dramatic," she muttered. "You're responsible now. That child is your problem." I wanted to yell at her, to tell her how heartless that sounded, but instead I looked down at the tiny boy sleeping soundly in his carrier. And right then I decided he would never feel unwanted again. Years slipped by. I raised him, Eli, as if he were my own son. The school runs, the scraped knees, the birthday candles. Every memory belonged to us. My parents showed up maybe once a year, offering cheap toys and thinly disguised criticism. "You shouldn't fill his head with lies," my father once warned. "What lies?" I asked. "That his mother might come back." So I stopped mentioning Melissa. I stopped waiting for closure. But at night, when the house grew quiet, I still scrolled through old email threads, hoping for even a trace of her. Then one day I found something. It began with an insurance notice addressed to her, but sent to my home. Policy I'd never heard of. Melissa had listed me as her emergency contact, and as a secondary beneficiary on a life insurance plan worth a small fortune. But she wasn't dead, or at least I didn't think she was. When I called the company, they told me the policy was active but dormant. Payments had stopped the very week she disappeared. And the beneficiaries? Not just me, our parents too. That's when things began to make sense. Quietly I started digging. Bank records, property transfers, old trust funds, anything with their names on it. For years they'd sworn they were broke, but their tax filings told another story. 3 months after Melissa vanished, they had collected a settlement from a death claim filed under her name. They'd declared her dead. No body, no investigation, nothing. They'd forged her signature, drained her accounts, split the payout, and left her baby on my doorstep. My blood ran cold. That was the moment I understood. They hadn't simply abandoned Eli. They'd erased his mother completely. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I documented everything. Quietly. Methodically. Every bank statement, every falsified form, even a notarized copy of the forged insurance claim. All dated, labeled, and safe. Then I filed for legal guardianship of Eli. It took nearly a year, endless forms, background checks, signatures, but eventually it was official. My guardianship was airtight. And then I waited. 10 years later, when Eli had grown into a bright, kind, and steady young man, they resurfaced. Suddenly, my parents wanted grandparents' rights. They accused me of alienating them, of poisoning Eli against his family. They even hired a lawyer. I let them speak. I let them twist the story, paint me as bitter and vindictive. I didn't interrupt because I didn't need to. When it was my turn, I stood and handed the judge the sealed folder. He opened it slowly, scanning the contents. Inside were copies of every forged document, every bank statement, and a notarized affidavit of the fraudulent insurance claim. There was also an audio recording, my father bragging about how Melissa's mess finally paid off, and a letter from the insurance company confirming the payout. I watched their expressions crumble in real time. My mother's face drained of color. My father's jaw clenched until it trembled. The judge leaned back in his chair. "Do they realize the criminal implications of this?" he asked. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He looked at me again. "Do you wish to press charges?" I turned toward the 2 people who had taught me survival through abandonment, who had treated love like a currency to be spent and withheld. Then I thought of Eli waiting outside the courtroom, backpack on his shoulder, full of drawings and hope. "No," I said softly. I just want legal peace for him. The judge nodded once. Then it's granted. When Eli and I stepped outside, the autumn air felt lighter, cleaner. Like the world had finally exhaled. Leaves rustled above us, whispering a kind of closure I hadn't known existed. Behind us, my parents sat frozen inside the courtroom, whispering to each other, realizing for the first time that their power meant nothing. Eli looked up at me as we walked down the steps. "Are we okay now?" he asked. I smiled. We always were. That night, I burned the extra copies of the evidence I no longer needed, not out of mercy but out of release. Some truths serve their purpose only once. But I kept the originals locked away. Because one day, when Eli asks about his mother, I'll tell him everything. And I'll show him exactly what justice sounds like. When it doesn't have to raise its voice.